Looks like it's working. November the 22nd. Wow. And lesson number 66. This must be an important lesson. Numbers like 66 up there. It's kind of scary. Well, we'll open class with a word of prayer. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, our creator and maker, and the one in whom we live and move and have our being. And we're thankful you've given us another week that we can gather here as a group, unafraid, and study these things in your book that give us, well, they give us concern, and yet at the same time, we realize that you have prepared a way for us. So that when we see all these things breaking forth on the world scene, we know that our redemption draws nigh. And we are looking forward, Lord, to that day when we can see you coming on the clouds of heaven. And we ask your blessing on each one that's here today, that we might indeed find that blessing you have left for us in this book, the book of Revelation. For we ask this in Christ's name. Amen. Lesson 66. There must be something important here. Number 66. So we'll review lesson 65. We got a sign of the times, and then we'll do Revelation chapter 8. Chapter 8 is pretty small. And so I had to do a little fill-in work, and we'll see how that goes. Lesson 65, that was Revelation chapter 7. We had the sealing of the 144,000. And this sealing took place before the angels, these four angels, are allowed to hurt the earth and the sea. And the important thing here is to recognize that this occurs between the sixth and the seventh seals. So there has been some hurting going on in the earth. So this 144,000, they didn't get sealed out of everything. They still had to endure something. So be nice to be among the 144,000. It'd be better to be among that group that John represents in chapter 4 when he hears that trumpet sound and the call like a trumpet to come up here. And we've noticed that there are 12,000 from each of the tribes except the tribe of Dan. And the tribe of Dan may have been exempted due to the fact that, well, it was an idol worshiper. They fell off into idol worship, and they fell under a certain plague or whatever from God by virtue of that. And then the interesting thing is that between the sixth and seventh seal, John sees a great multitude in heaven. He doesn't recognize them. He don't know who they are. You would think if it was the church, he would have recognized them. But these clearly are not the church. But they have come out of great tribulation. Now, they haven't come out of all of it. I mean, they got exempted from the worst parts. But the front end of it, apparently there is a great multitude on planet Earth who suddenly figure out what's going on. And they, from all indications, are raptured also. Be my guess, it was probably on a Rosh Hashanah too. Perhaps the first Rosh Hashanah after the one which we live on. And the angel explains that these tribes are from every division of humanity on earth. So that's kind of interesting. And it's also interesting that they're characterized as carrying palm branches. They're not characterized as sitting on thrones, but standing before them. And so we find all sorts of exceptions in this particular group to the church, which lead us to believe they are another group. But they went into tribulation, but they got exempted at least from some of it. And their service, they serve God day and night in his temple. They do not rule and reign, but they do serve. So it leads us to believe that this group is a separate group. It's a huge numbered group, implying that the church is probably a lesser number group. But the church has a role to play. We find the church rules and reigns. This particular group stands before the throne, serves. Then we got the 144,000. And they go with Jesus wherever he goes. They're his running buddies. We've got separate responsibilities that we're seeing right now in the heavenly order of things. And it looks like to me, my opinion, but I kind of like the church's job the best. Ruling and reigning. I always like that better than serving. Just my opinion. Any questions about chapter 7? Everybody, of course, agrees with me 100%. Signs of the times.
One quick comment. When they make these polls,
Yeah.
are you a Christian? Yeah. Everybody says they are, right? The majority of the nation, 70-some%. It's not true. There are not that many true Christians here. When it comes down to it.
Yeah,
the small people that go to church.
There are people that go to church, and you kind of believe from the admonition to the 7 churches that there are churches which will not make the trip. And consequently, they probably are going to lose that eternal job responsibility. They may get demoted down to servants. But those who are like the church at Philadelphia, there is a direct promise to that group. Because you have a little faith, a little strength, I will keep you from the whole mess. And how is that keeping done? Well, 1 Corinthians 15:51-52, behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all die, but we shall all be changed in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the sound of the last trump. Okay, sign of the times. It'll be interesting to see how I weave all this into chapter 8. Strikingly tall skeletons uncovered in Ecuador and Peru in the Amazon region are undergoing examination in Germany, according to a research team headed by British anthropologist Russell Dement. Will these remains prove that a race of tall people existed hundreds of years ago in the deep Amazon forest? Since 2013, the team has reported finding a half a dozen human skeletons dating from the 1400s into the mid-1500s that measure between 7 and 8 feet tall. This was reported in theepictimes.com. Now, anybody who has a handle on American history, particularly in the 1800s, you will find all kinds of newspaper scripts in which they found the skeletons of extremely large people, 8, 9, some 10, some occasionally 15 feet tall. Abraham Lincoln reported about these findings. They're in all the kinds of newspapers, and when you find them, you find that their remains were sent to the Smithsonian Institute. And so we should all be able to go to the Smithsonian and see them.
They're not there.
They're not there. Every time one of these skeletons are dug up and sent to the Smithsonian, it mysteriously vanishes. Almost like Hillary's emails. They just vanish and go away. And why is that? Because it doesn't fit the evolutionist frame of reference. And so how do you resolve that issue? You deal with the facts? No, you destroy the facts. Well, in this case, they sent them to Germany, who doesn't have a dog in that hunt. So maybe we will eventually find out about these people. We already know that the coneheads they found down there in Venezuela, these are not humans. Their genetic makeup is entirely different from a human being. And so that evidence has been, it's got good scientific research behind it. We got their genetics, they got their DNA. So at any rate, we'll see how this one turns out. But my suspicion is somebody will try to cover that one up too. Okay, seeing how we're studying Revelation, let's talk about the Battle of Jericho. Jericho is found right up here. It's just north of the Dead Sea in Israel. And the Battle of Jericho is interesting from a variety of reasons, but I wanted to show you some pictures of the site. This is the city of Jericho, and it's kind of hard to see anything here. They've got a trench they dug in that area. And surprisingly, what they have found here is the city was surrounded by a wall, and strangely, the wall fell out. And not only that, they have found big vases full of wheat and stuff burned up. So it absolutely confirms the biblical account of what happened when Joshua went through the land and destroyed it. And here's kind of how the city was protected. It had a lower wall down here, and then it had an upper wall up there. And then this area right here was kind of slick. The material that's in there, if you tried to go up that, it'd be very difficult to do. And so at the time, it was almost impregnable, the way the city was designed. And here's a guy who's looking at a section of the wall that collapsed, made out of mud bricks. That's an anthropologist. I don't remember what his name was, but at any rate, that's some background. I want to go over this Battle of Jericho with you here briefly. Joshua, the son of Nun, sent out of Shittim 2 men to spy out secretly. Sent out 2 witnesses to go view the land in Jericho, and when they went, of course, they ended up in the harlot's house, Rahab. What do we know about Rahab?
She's part of the lineage.
Lineage of Christ, right? Boy. Now, if you were doing a Hollywood movie, you wouldn't make your key personality come from the lineage of a prostitute, would you?
A hooker? No.
A hooker? That's not the way I would do it. God has strange ways. His ways are clearly not ours. Now, as the children of Israel approached Jericho, it was shut up because of the children of Israel. People in the land, as you'll recall, Israel was coming into the land, and everywhere they went, they wiped out everybody in front of them. Scared the bejeebers out of everybody, even Jericho here, but they felt secure because they were behind a rampart, highly protected city. And the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have given into thine hand Jericho, and the king thereof, and the mighty men of valor." Now, that use of that word, mighty men, anybody know what that word is in Hebrew? Gibborim. And if you'll think back in Genesis chapter 6, talks about the Nephilim. And it said, they were on the earth, and they were the mighty men of valor of times of old. And what do we know about them? Giants. So at any rate, there are apparently giants here in this place. And it says, you will compass the city, ye men of war, and go around the city once. And you'll do that 6 days. So you're going to compass the city once. An interesting thing about it is that the priests are going and leading the war. This is against the Torah. The Levites were never supposed to be leading in a war or a battle. So this is strange. And the 7 priests shall bear the ark. 7 trumpets of ram's horns. On the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow with the trumpets. And it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast, that's Torah, by the way, with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and all the people shall ascend every man straight before him. So the whole wall is coming down, and as you're surrounding it, then you attack. Now this is interesting. 7 trumpets. Yom Torah. What is that day? Anybody know what that day is? Rosh Hashanah. Now Joshua the son of Nun called the priest and said unto them, take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns, shofars, before the ark of the Lord. And he said to the people, pass on and compass the city, and let him that is armed pass on before the ark of the Lord. And it came to pass, when Joshua had spoken unto the people, that the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of the ram's horns passed on before the Lord, and blew the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of the Lord followed them. And the armed men went before the priest and blew the trumpets, and the rearward came after the ark, the priest going on blowing with the trumpets. And Joshua had commanded the people, saying, ye shall not shout or make any noise with your voice, neither shall the word proceed out of your mouth until the day I bid you shout. Then you shall shout. In other words, keep quiet. before this is going. 6 days. Keep quiet. So the ark of the Lord encompassed the city, going about it once, and they came into the camp and lodged in the camp. And Joshua rose up early in the morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord, and the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord went on continually, and blew the trumpets, and the armed men went before them. But the rearward came up after the ark of the Lord, the priests going on and blowing the trumpets. And the 2nd day they compassed the city once, and returned to the camp, and so they did it for 6 days. And it came to pass on the 7th day that they rose up early about the dawning of the day, and compassed the city after the same manner 7 times. Only on that day they compassed the city 7 times. And it came to pass on the 7th time that the priests blew the trumpets. Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord hath given you the city." So the people shouted, and when the priests blew the trumpets, it came to pass that when the people heard the sound of the trumpets, that the people shouted with a great shout, and the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city, just like Joshua told them. And they utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man, woman, young, old, ox, sheep, ass, and with the edge of the sword. Why did they do that? I mean, can't we all just get along? There was a reason. And they burnt the city with fire. This is not politically correct. And all that was therein, only the silver and the gold and the vessels of brass and iron, they put in the treasury of the house of the Lord. And Joshua saved Rahab the harlot alive, and her father's household, and all that she had, and she dwelleth in Israel unto this day, because she hid the messengers which Joshua were sent out to spy out Jericho. And here's another section of it, the story. As Joshua, as he got through fighting the battle of Jericho, he went on to Jerusalem, and it was ruled by a king called Adoni-Zedek. The word literally means Lord of Righteousness. And he was the king of Jerusalem, and he heard how Joshua had taken Ai and utterly destroyed it, as he had done to Jericho and her king. So he had done to Ai and her king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them, and that they feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, because it was greater than Ai, and all the men thereof were mighty. Interesting. There's that mighty word again. Wherefore Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, sent unto Hoham, king of Hebron, and unto Param, king of Jarmuth, and unto Japhia, king of Lachish, and to Debir, king of Eglon, saying, Come up to me and help me, that we may smite Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and the children of Israel. Therefore the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon, gathered themselves together and went up, and they and all their host encamped before Gibeon, and made war against it. And the men of Gibeon sent unto Joshua to the camp of Gilgal, saying, Slack not thy hand from thy servants, come to us quickly and save us and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites that dwell in the mountains are gathered together against us. Now, I didn't know this, but Amorites. In Amos 2:9 it says, Yet destroyed I the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of cedars, and was strong as oaks, yet I destroyed his fruit from above, and his roots from beneath. The Amorites were Nephilim. And what we're finding out here is nearly all of the tribes in that region were either all Nephilimites, or they were a mixed race of humans and Nephilim. So Joshua ascended from Gilgal, he and all the peoples of war with him, and the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said unto Joshua, Fear them not, for I have delivered them into your hand, and there shall not a man of them stand before thee. And Joshua therefore came unto them suddenly, and went up from Gilgal all night. And the Lord discomforted them before Israel, and slew them with a great slaughter in Gibeon, and chased them along the way up until Beth Horon, and smote them to Azekah, and unto I wish they hadn't made up. Well, whatever that word is. And it came to pass, as they fled from Israel and were going down into Beth Horon, that God cast down great stones from heaven upon them, unto Azekah, and they died. And there were more died from the hailstones than they whom the children of Israel slew with the sword. So that was one little fact that I had forgotten about. And then he spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. Now I forgot about this part, but the sun and the moon stood still. We had a cosmic disturbance here during this particular time. And the sun stood still and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. And is it not written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and haste not to go down for the whole day. And there was no day like that day before it or after it. And the Lord hearkened his voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. And Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, unto the camp at Gilgal. But these 5 kings fled and hid themselves in a cave in Makkedah. Now, just so happens, I have a book of Jasher. Let's see what Jasher says about this. This is chapter LXXX. IX.
So which one is that? So what chapter is that then?
I don't know. I was hoping you could decode it for me. There's too many X's in there for me. But at any rate, it says, whilst they were fleeing, the Lord sent upon them hailstones from heaven, and more of them died by the hailstones than by the slaughter of the children of Israel. And the children of Israel pursued them, and they smote them in the road, going, smiting them. And when they were smiting, the day was declining toward evening. And Joshua said in the sight of all the people, Sun, stand thou up on Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ajalon, until the nation has revenged itself on its enemies. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Joshua, and the sun stood still in the midst of the heavens, and the moon stood still 36 moments. The guy says, I don't know how to interpret this word, but apparently some unit of time, 6:30, maybe 6 hours or something like that. And the moon stood still and hastened not to go down for the whole day. And there was not a day like that, before it or after it. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of man, for the Lord fought for Israel. So the book of Jasher records the event, and it was a supernatural event. The Lord began to slay. He killed these people with stones from heaven. And the interesting thing is, they find these little tidbits stuck all over here. They hid themselves in caves. And at that time came Joshua and cut off the Anakims from the mountains, from Hebron, from Debir and Anab, and from all the mountains of Judah and from the mountains of Israel. Joshua destroyed them utterly with their cities. There were none of the Anakim left in the land with the children of Israel, only in Gaza. In Gath, Ashdod, there they remained. Where did Goliath come from, by the way? He came from Gath. Anakims, the Hebrew, or the long-necked people. These were more Nephilim. And so they were wiped out. Now, these are the kings of the land whom the Israelites had defeated, whose territory they took over east of the Jordan from Arnon Gorge to Mount Hermon, including the eastern side of Arabia. Araba? I think that means Arabia. Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned with Heshbon, we know that guy's a Nephilim. He ruled from Aor to the rim of the Arnon Gorge, and from the middle of the gorge to the Jabbok River, which is on the border of the Ammonites. This included half of Gilead. He also ruled over the eastern half of Arabah, from the Sea of Galilee to the Sea of Arabah, that is the Dead Sea, to Beth Jeshimoth, then southward to the slopes of Pisgah. And the territory of Og of Bashan, one of the last of the Rephaites who reigned in Ashtaroth and Edrei. The Rephaim, that's mostly translated in the scripture as giants. These were more of this Nephilim tribe. They were all over the place.
I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
How
How tall were these giants, you think?
Well, we're going to find out right here. It's very very good timing here, because it says, "For only Og, the king of Bashan, remained in the remnant of the giants. Behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron. It is not, is it not in Rabbath of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth thereof, after the cubit of a man." This guy was about 9 feet 9 inches tall, so just short of 10 feet tall. And as some people have suspected, his weight was probably around 2,000 pounds. This was one big guy. That's why his bed had to be made out of iron. Now, the interesting thing is, the assumption is that they were all killed here. Well, all of them, these Nephilimite, these giant creatures, were killed in certain regions, but they remained, because we know Goliath was still around, and so he was there for at least until the time of David. And the rest of Gilead, all of Bashan, being the kingdom of Og, gave I to the half tribe of Manasseh. The region of Argob with Bashan was called the land of the giants. That's in Deuteronomy. So the giants were there. They were all over the earth. And let me read you something. Everybody agrees that Jude is a book in the Bible, right? Let me pass this logic along. If Jude is a book in the Bible and it quotes wholesale another book, what kind of value would you place on that book? I would say it's worth listening to, wouldn't you think? Well, let me read to you a passage in Jude. This is Jude chapter 1 and verse 14 and 15. About these also Enoch, the 7th generation from Adam, prophesied, saying, Behold, the Lord came with many of thousands of his holy ones, to execute judgment upon all, and to convict the ungodly of their ungodly deeds which they have done in an ungodly way, and all the harsh things which the ungodly sinners have spoken against him. This is the prophecies of Enoch. And if you open the prophecies of Enoch and read chapter 2, it says, Behold, he comes with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment upon them and to destroy the wicked and reprove the flesh for everything done in the sinful and ungodly way they have done and committed against him. My point is, Jude pulled this right out of the prophecies of Enoch. It's in the prophecies of Enoch that we get more detail about what happened in Genesis chapter 6. Remember, the sons of the gods came down and dwelt with the daughters of men, and there were Nephilim, giants, in the world. Let me read you something here. This is chapter 7 of the book of Enoch. It says, It happened after the sons of men had multiplied in those days, and daughters were born unto them, elegant and beautiful, that when the angels, the sons of heaven, beheld them, they became enamored of them, saying to each other, Let us go select for ourselves wives of the progeny of men, and let us beget children. Then their leader, Samyaza, said to them, I fear that you perhaps be indisposed in the performance of this enterprise, that I alone will suffer for so grievous a crime. But they answered him and said, We will swear, and we will bind ourselves with mutual execrations, that we will not change our intention, but execute our projected undertaking. And so they swore all together and bound themselves by mutual execrations, and the whole number of them was 200, who descended upon Ardis, which is on top of Mount Armon, or Mount Hermon. These 200 angels came down, descended to the top of Mount Hermon. Where were these Ammonites located? Around Mount Hermon. They were still there. And the mountain is therefore called Hermon because they had sworn upon it and bound themselves with mutual execrations. And these are the names of the chiefs, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce them. And they were the prefects of 200 angels, and the remainder all with them. And they took wives, each choosing for himself, whom they began to approach, and with whom they cohabited, teaching them sorcery, incantation, the dividing of roots and trees, And they conceived and brought forth giants, whose stature was each 300 cubits. I suspect we've got an interpretation error there. I suspect that 300 cubits was not 300 cubits, but it was some fraction thereof. And these devoured all of the labors which men produced until it became impossible to feed them. And then they turned themselves against men in order to devour them. They began to injure birds, beasts, reptiles, fish, and eat their flesh, one after another, and drink their blood. Then the earth reproved the unrighteous. Now, later on in the book of Enoch, over here on chapter 15, I'm going to start with verse 8. Now the giants, this was the offspring of these angelic beings, who have been born of spirit and flesh, shall call upon the earth evil spirits. On the earth shall be their habitation. Evil spirits shall proceed from their flesh, because they were created from above, from the holy watchers. Was their beginning and primary foundations. Evil spirits shall they be upon the earth. Spirits of the wicked shall they be called. The habitation of the spirits of heaven shall be in heaven, but upon earth the habitation of the terrestrial spirits which are born in the earth. The spirits of the giants shall be like clouds, which shall oppress, corrupt, fall, contend, and bruise upon the earth. They shall cause lamentation. No food shall they eat. They shall be thirsty. They shall be concealed. Whose spirits rise up against the sons of men and against women, for they come forth from them during the days of slaughter and destruction. That's the days that we're studying here in the Revelation account. The days of slaughter and destruction. Now it says furthermore, as to the death of the giants, wheresoever their spirits depart their bodies, let their flesh, which is perishable, be without judgment. Thus they shall perish until the day of the great consummation of the great world. It shall be consummated respecting the watchers and the impious. Basically what they're saying is, when they die, let them be dead. But their spirits are going to remain around here, and they are going to cause contention and corruption until the day of, well, the day of the Lord, the day of wrath. So my point being here, what we know. First of all, what was the name of Joshua? In Hebrew, his name is Yehoshua, which is a variant of the name Yeshua. And we know who Yeshua is. That is the Lord. That is Jesus. Yeshua meaning salvation. Now, the Jews and the Hebrews and their mindset, whenever you have a prophecy, the prophecy in their mind was not a unique event, not just one event. Whenever the prophets prophesied, it was a pattern of events. Whenever you see this pattern occur, that is a fulfillment of the prophecy. Now, let me give you an example. When Jesus in Matthew 24 was talking about, the disciples came up to him and says, Jesus laid the bomb on him and said, this temple that you see here, the most magnificent structure probably in the whole world, it's going to be torn down, not only one stone left upon another. They were shocked. And he went on to say that whenever you see the armies of the heathen campus about Jerusalem, then those who are in Judea should flee to the hills. Well, what happened in 70 AD? The armies of Titus campused around Jerusalem. The Christians, remembering this, fled to the hills. What happened? They were saved. What happened to those that remained? Well, you can read Josephus, one of the most vicious, cruel horror stories you've ever seen. And you couldn't even make a movie from Hollywood about it. It was so gross. But at any rate, the point is, was Jesus talking about 70 AD? Well, if you read his prophecy further, he says, he's going to come again, and his feet are going to sit down upon the Mount of Olives. Well, it says, he's going to return, and all the angels are going to be gathering, and all sorts of things referring to an end-time event when Jesus returns. So how can that be when Titus was destroying Jerusalem? Well, the pattern was there. You see the pattern, you know what to do. It appears that this Jericho may have been a pattern of events. We've got a guy here, the leader of the Confederation, Anazai means Lord of Righteousness, which is a big lie. This guy was anything but righteous. This is comparable to the white horse guy that we saw come out in the apocalypse. The enemies were defeated by hailstones thrown by God, where later on we're going to find in the Revelation account, the Lord is going to destroy these people tied to the earth system with hailstones that weigh 100 pounds. There were signs in the sun and the moon. Going to be those too. We'll see those as we come up. The king's hidden caves. What happened in Revelation chapter 5? The king's hidden caves. Everybody hid in caves. I mean, and the whole event of Joshua's taking the promised land was the establishment of a monarchy. And what do we know about the millennial kingdom? It's reigned by a king. So, and one of the reasons for the complete annihilation of the enemies was because they were descendants of the Nephilim. There was no mercy given to those offspring of the union of the angelic watchers and men. They were killed without mercy. God told them. Now remember, I remember reading the Old Testament, and it seemed like there was two kinds of gods. There was the God of wrath in the Old Testament, and then there was the good God in the New Testament. Never could rationalize why God would want to kill all these people. Why would you want to do that? Well, it's because I didn't understand the big game plan, the picture. The genetic organism of mankind was contaminated. Most of it was taken care of with the flood, but as it says in Genesis chapter 4, it says that they were there then and later. The later was after the flood. So if they were there after the flood, how come they didn't get wiped out in the flood if the flood was universal? But I'm not going there today. The sons of God saw the daughters of men, and they were fair, and they took for themselves wives of all they chose. This is Genesis chapter 6. And the Lord said, my spirit will not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. That could mean 120 sets of years, of 120 Jubilee years, by the way. Then there were giants on the earth in those days, and after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bare children with them, some became mighty men, which were old men of renown. That mighty men, there's Gibberemes. And so the point is, there were giants in the earth. The Bible says there were giants in the earth. All of the evidence that we see in the founding of America indicates there were giant bones here on the earth. You look at the myths of the Cherokee people. They believed there were giants. They were red-headed. Some of them were 30 feet tall. They ran around the plains killing buffalo with their bare hands. You go into the internet and just type in American Indian giant myths. They're in every tribe. There were one tribe that said that there were giant red-headed people in the region that, well, I think it was the Paiutes, that they went around killing and eating the Paiutes. And the Paiutes were obviously trying to kill them back. And they narrowed them down to just 2 or 3, and they got them in a cave, and they shot them with arrows and put a fire in the mouth of the cave and killed them. And later on, some explorers found that cave, and they found red-headed giant bones in there, which they sent to the Smithsonian, so you can go there today and see them. But my point is, all over planet Earth, there have been these giants found. They do not fit the evolutionary model. Consequently, how do you deal with them? Well, you try to ignore them and cover them up as best you can. But it's getting to the point now where you can't even cover them up. So what has this got to do with the book of Revelation? Well, the battle of Jericho was a shadow and a type of what's to come. Joshua was just a type of Yeshua. And when he comes, he is going to dispossess this world of all of these beings. And there is coming a great deception on the planet. I am convinced that deception is tied into the Nephilim. These spaceships, these UFOs that we see, I am convinced are intelligently driven, and they are not from outer space. They are from right here. And these beings are the progeny of angelic watchers to this day. And they will make themselves known, and they will claim that they are the ones who created all human life. And there's thousands of people, millions, will buy into that story. But there will be a bunch that won't, who will recognize what's going on. It appears to me that one of the purposes of the wrath of God is to complete the job he started with Noah, and that is to completely rid this planet of evil spirits. And we're going to find out that there's 4 angelic beings that are hidden or literally chained on the Euphrates River. How come is it that there's never been peace in that part of the world? My suspicion is it has something to do with the influence of those angels. But that's one piece of this puzzle you probably won't get from any other teaching on Revelation. The purpose of the wrath of God is cleansing the planet, number one, and preparing the way for a monarchy. That is Jesus Christ, who will rule and reign over this planet. And from what I understand, just now after studying in this class, that ruling and reigning with the rod of iron will be done with subordinate kings who will be part of the church. So,
I need to ask a question.
I can't believe that. I know your head is going to explode.
Sooner or later, the Bible says that there'll be a new heaven and a new earth, and the old has passed away.
Exactly right. That's in Revelation 22, and we're going to get there. And that's where we're headed. That monarchy eventually takes complete control of planet Earth. There's one more rebellion to come. We're going to find Satan will be chained up and imprisoned for a 1,000-year period. And during that 1,000-year period, there will be no deceitfulness on this planet. There will be no wickedness. There will be no celestial interference.
But there'll be death.
There will be death, but yet we're going to have a reconstitution of the Garden of Eden, in that men will live to be the age of a tree, 700, 800, 900 years old. And we're going to reconstitute the original intent of the Garden of Eden, but as always happens, even though we've got God here and ruling and reigning with the rod of iron, there will be rebellion. And that rebellion will be taken care of when Satan is released from his chains for a period. And then we're going to have the Gog-Magog war, which people in the prophetic world are trying to push in front of the wrath of God. And it won't fit there. So hold that thought until we get to Revelation 22. Now this is, Revelation chapter 8. And when he had opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for the space of about a half an hour. There was some silence, 6 times silence. But when the 7th time came, silence was broken. And I saw 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. Opened the 7th, and the smoke of incense which came from the prayers of the saints ascended before God out of the angel's hand. We were talking about prayer this morning. And prayer is an act of worship, and it is perceived by God as incense. Wow. So when you are praying, regardless of what you're praying for, God interprets your prayer as incense, something sweet smelling. And an angel took the censer and filled it with the fire of the altar and cast it to the earth, and there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. Joshua blew those 7 trumpets. No doubt there were some thunderings, maybe not lightning, but there were sure voices. So there are a lot of parallels here between Joshua's attack on Jericho and what we're going to see right now. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. Yes?
I was going to say, if there were hailstones big enough to kill people, there may have been lightning around that time.
Well, you got a good point there. We're going to see hailstones coming down, and if they were dense enough, they could build up static electricity. And well, we've seen what happens in a volcano. You've seen pictures of volcanoes blowing up here recently, and that ash plume comes up. You get lightnings. You don't have to have clouds of water vapor to make lightning, just clouds.
Carl, there's historical records of hail in West Texas, killing cows and things of this nature. So the size of them are incredible. So it's like sheets of ice that come down.
I heard of
trees and stuff.
when I was in northwest Oklahoma, which is pretty close to the Panhandle. We had heard stories about cattle being killed with ice storms, and I heard another story. You remember when they first tested the first thermonuclear bomb, hydrogen bomb, down in an atoll in the South Pacific somewhere? There was a Japanese ship that was like 60 miles away, reported chunks of ice falling out of the sky. And if my memory's right, some people on that ship were killed. So when you blew all that water up in the air and it came down, chunks of ice formed. And one of the things we know about these end time events, we can deduce from that treaty which the Antichrist is going to sign. That was a nuclear non-proliferation treaty, and he breaks the treaty in the midst of that 7-year period. What does that mean? That means he's got nukes. And of course, then we've talked about and read from what was it we read from? My mind has gone blank. Oh, 2nd Esdras, where it reports what for all intents and purposes, are missiles landing and kicking up huge angry clouds of smoke. Well, you drop a few of those in the Red Sea, blow up all that water, I bet you'll have hailstones 100 pounds. Could easily happen just by the things of man's manufacture. Doesn't necessarily require a miracle. Okay, and the 5th angel sounded, followed by hail, fire mingled with blood. And they were cast upon the earth, and a third part of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burnt up. Now we're getting into the thirds. Right now, we're in the second set of 7. We got 7 seals have already come down, and they were pretty vicious. Well, it looks like these are getting even worse. And now we're going to see, this is the prophecy of the thirds, because you're going to see a third of about everything destroyed. So a third of the trees and all the green grass. And fire mingled with blood. I don't know if any of you have been following the news, but there have been several rains in India and other places that have been red. Looks just like blood. Somehow, some kind of algae has gotten up into the atmosphere, and when it rained, it looked like blood. Maybe that's what we're talking about here. Or it could be just, as it says, maybe there's blood in there. And the 2nd angel sounded, as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood. My suspicion is that thing that was dropped into the ocean may have something to do with that red rain that we're seeing now. There could be an asteroid. Who knows? Maybe it's made out of rust or something. And when it kicks up into the atmosphere, it'll look like blood falling out of the sky. Don't want to be here to find out all the details. It's my speculation. And it says a third part of the creatures which were in the sea that had life and died, and a third part of the ships were destroyed. Now, it's interesting, if you look at the Greek word for sea, which is thalipsis, it could mean only the Red Sea or only the Mediterranean Sea. It may not mean all oceans of the world. So, for whatever it's worth, when it says all the earth, we may be talking in similar terms as when Noah, the flood, flooded the whole earth. Kol eretz. Kol eretz doesn't mean the whole planet, it means the whole country. So keep in mind that what we're seeing here may be isolated to the Middle East. Don't know, but we'll see. And the 3rd angel sounded, and there fell a star from heaven, burning as it was a lamp, and it fell upon a third part of the rivers and the fountains of waters. And the name of the star was called Wormwood. And a third of part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Okay. For $100 and Final Jeopardy. What is the name wormwood in Russian?
It's something to do with Chernobyl.
You win $100.
That's good.
Write yourself a check.
Wait, that's a setup.
You didn't think I was gonna.
You're
You
sure.
didn't think I was gonna risk anything here, did you? $100. That's a lot of money.
Oh, wait.
But Chernobyl is what wormwood is in Russian.
It was kind of an easy deduction. If it's in Russia and it's, yeah.
Easy for you to say. I was trying to catch it. I just can't catch anybody anymore. Okay, the waters became bitter. Well, what do you know about Chernobyl now? Go there and try to drink the water. You'll glow in the dark. So the water will be made bitter, and this is perfectly consistent with our seeing of how things are falling together. We're going to have nuclear war. And what happens in nuclear war? You get contamination all over the place. So this region of the world, maybe just this region, my suspicion is it's probably not, but it's possible it's just this region of the world that we're talking about here. And the fourth angel sounded, and a third part of the sun was smitten, and a third part of the moon, and a third part of the stars, and a third part of them were darkened. And the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. Kick all this crap up in the atmosphere, you're going to degrade the sunlight. And my suspicion is this probably is not going to require God dimming the sun by a third. It's going to dim the atmosphere by a third. And so it's possible, once again, that what we're looking at here is not a particular miracle of God. It's just the natural aftermath of a nuclear war. And behold, I heard an angel flying through the midst of the heavens, saying with a loud voice, Woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpets of the three angels which are yet to sound. Bad news is coming. If you think bad news has been here, you ain't seen nothing yet. We got 3 woes yet to come. So this chapter 8 is kind of a short chapter. There's not too much you can do with it except add Jericho in there. And the notion that this event, the pouring out of the wrath of God, is directed not only at the inhabitants of the earth, but the supernatural interference of angelic beings with mankind, which has caused the genome of man to be corrupted. And God abides no fools, nor does he abide people trying to do his job for him. And after all, God has designated and created hell, not for man, but for the devil and his angels. So he is purely not happy with what they have done. They are going to pay a significant price for it, but there has to come a time when the planet is returned to its original intent and condition. This process is called the wrath of God, and we'll get more of it next week. Any questions? Yes.
If you go to Israel today, you can't get to Jericho anymore. Pat and I were there in like 92 or 93, and the Muslims took it over in 95.
Wow.
And when we were there, you can see all the walls. I mean, you can't miss it. It's big walls, huge, all toppled down outward. That's all true.
It would have been nice to get a picture of that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, we have one somewhere, and I'll see if I can find it. It's buried in all of our stuff. Yeah, you can't live there anymore. In fact, you can't get within a mile. They have it all cordoned off with their guys with the guns and all that stuff. So,
Isn't that interesting? Every place you go in this planet which confirms the Bible to be true and accurate, you can't get there no more. Or you have a conspiracy to defraud people of the true evidence, such as with these giants. Giants have been there all along. They're reported everywhere, but you can't find their bones, except for this one situation in which they've sent them to Germany. So we'll see. Maybe we'll hear a report. My suspicion is they're going to find those bones don't match human genome. They will be somehow corrupted. So
I bet we never hear the results of that, though.
you may never.
Probably not.
But I'm going to keep watching and keep looking because at some point in time we're going to find them. You know, the Coneheads down in Venezuela, they got them. And we got those DNA typed. So that's significant evidence that can't be overlooked now. So you can go see those Coneheads down there. They're still there. So it shows that the human genome has been corrupted. and that there are these branches that came off of it, which evolutionists can't find a place for. You know, we got monkeys and they end up in humans. They don't go like that. Your size just doesn't go up and then back down again. No evidence of that. So how do you explain this? The only way you can explain is what the Bible says. There was a direct intervention by angelic beings in the genome of man, and the evidence of it is here today. And when Joshua was fighting Jericho, that area around Mount Hermon was where a lot of these creatures still were in existence. They didn't go far from home. So the stories, you know, like the prophecies of Enoch and others, for some reason the church ignores them. And I think, hey, if Jude quoted it, ought to be good enough for me to look at it. And the book of Jasher, it's around. You can find it, quoted by Joshua. Why shouldn't we look at it and see what it has to say? It has lots of interesting stuff to say, by the way, other than that. So, at any rate, that's it for today. Yes?
Just everyone have a very nice Thanksgiving and safe travel.
And don't forget where class is.
I can't, I know there's going to be a hope group